Michael Manor Lord's publisher says so many games fail because of bad contracts where publishers insist on making all their money back before devs get a bite of revenue. Annika, dude, her name really threw me off. I had never seen a last name. It's Anna Kolsika. Very unique name over at Games Radar. The head of Manor Lord's publisher, Hooded Horse, explains how a good few games fail due to money, or the lack thereof, following bad contractual agreements between the developers and publishing studios. Speaking in a new interview with Pirate Software lead Jason Thor Hall, Hooded Horse CEO Tim Bender says that publishing contracts are often the blame for games' lack of success. A sort of mainstay of publishing contracts, which I very much don't agree with, is 100% recoup terms where the publisher will recover first. All the sales will go towards recovering the publisher's costs before any sales revenue go to the developer, end quote. Bender continues agreeing with Hall as he refers to such publisher contracts as, quote, absolutely devastating, end quote. Quote, it's terrible. It leads to, so many games fail, and the people blame the developers. And it's like, well, we know what happened. They were buried under recoup. No matter what they did ever, they were never going to get out from under that and see any money from the game and be able to then support themselves, end quote. He continues, quote, when you set up a recoup terms, you're basically saying the most important thing is that the financial product to the publisher succeeds because it's very protective of that. Like getting all the money until the money comes back to the publisher, put it in essentially saying, I will not fail in the sense of financial project, end quote. Hall responds stating that the scenario, quote, there's no risk for the publisher, end quote, if the game ends up failing. Quote, they've already made their financials back. At that point, it's just pure profit, end quote. Bender agrees. Quote, the consequence is the developer gets no money until the publisher gets it back. It makes it much more likely to fail for the developers, and it also makes it much more likely to fail for players, end quote. His point here especially makes sense. If a game is financially successful for developers, fans can expect future improvements and updates. If it isn't, they can't, and, quote, it's over, end quote. Success on the developer's behalf rather than only the publisher's, quote, makes it much more likely that the games that could be improved upon after release answer players' complaints and turn into a successful game for the players, end quote. Bender concludes his point by asserting that Hooded Horse is, quote, the opposite, end quote, as the Manor Lord's publisher doesn't, quote, use the recoup terms, end quote. A refreshing revelation to say the least. He doesn't go into their terms, obviously, but it's not about them first. They're putting the actual developer first, Michael, which is a nice change of pace.
Oh yeah, 100% nice change of pace. I will say, I'll play a little bit of devil's advocate here. You gotta have a successful game to sort of get away from that 100% recoup, right? Because if the publisher comes in and says, we're gonna front all your money, you say, okay, let's do 50-50, for example. That game flops, the publisher's out. Now they might be less likely to support another game. So there is sort of that back and forth. Of course, we do have two developers saying, why don't developers get more money? So I see it. I'm with you. I wish it would be more of that, maybe 50-50, whatever the better number is. But I understand from a publisher's term where they're going to come in and say, like, we want all our money back. Let's help us out. All right, there's my devil's, argument, just so that people aren't saying we're all in developers. I will say the other thing they don't get into with this, Drew, that I think 100% is why this happens. This is why we get battle passes. This is why we get these skins or whatever, right? Those are ways to make that money faster for publishers. That, hey, we need to sell 1 million copies to make our money back. Well, it's like, what if we sell 500,000 copies and then we have half those 500,000 by the battle pass, another half by this skin, and this is kind of why we get all those predatory things and microtransactions that people hate, is because of these terms. And so if these terms were fixed, they'd be great. I just don't know where we get to a world where all the publishers are all of a sudden going to say, we'll wait on our money for you to make a better game, because as you and I know, Drew, not every game is going to be a good game.
No, well, that's just it, right? How many games we review here in a week, and half of them are good and half of them are not, and some are way more successful than others, right? Manor Lord's very lucky to be in the position that they are currently in. That team, because not just one person, there's multiple people actually that have developed that game, it made a huge successful game, which is great on them, right? That is perfect. Dude, I haven't been able to jump in myself. I've been watching from a distance, and I'm pretty disappointed because it seems very much my kind of game to get into. So at one point, maybe over the holidays when my backlog's not as big, I'll be able to jump in and take a look finally, right? But it's one of those, came out in early access, it hit huge. Where's that money go, right? Obviously, Bender's saying it doesn't go back to them right away. You need, as a publisher, you need to make your money back. As a developer, you need to make money, keep the lights on, right?
Yep.
So they're going to fund you up front, but at the end of the day, when your game starts to make money, it's nice to see that reward too and that success come back to you so that you can keep the lights on and then keep improving the game. So the minute that Manor Lords came out, dude, everybody jumped on it, but they're like, well, this doesn't work, that doesn't work, this mechanic is broken. And granted, I'm sure the team over there knew already going in, okay, we have a list of things we already need to fix, but more things get discovered with more people jumping in, right? I think that's the other side of it. You don't notice, because you get almost like a blind's eye making your own stuff, right? As an artist, when I take a look at my own work, I'm drawing, everything looks good, I step back, somebody else comes in and goes, that looks weird. I went, oh, you know what, you're right. And then you go in and fix it. Same here with the game development too, right? You step back, you let somebody else take the hands and go into your game and go, hey, they never even thought of doing this. And another player comes in and they do that instead. And all of a sudden that part is broken. Now they need to fix it. But you can't fix it, dude, if the publisher takes all the money and you're not able to keep the lights on. And as a development studio, you get shut down. Small teams fail all the time. Curious to see what the future looks like then if more people are going to pick up on this method, Michael.